Hello, welcome back to Learning Curves. I'm Anastasia, and today I want to talk about a crafternooning opportunity. I enjoy a lot of needlework, quilting, embroidery, cross-stitch, and I wanted to share a relatively quick and relatively easy way that I like to personalize things, whether they be things for myself or my family or gifts. And so today I'm going to show you how I added my daughter's nickname to her bag that she got from my mom. She has this little purse that she likes to carry around, and my daughter's name is Isabel, and we call her Belly sometimes. This isn't the 100% easiest project ever. There were a couple of things that I made that were a little harder for me than other projects, but I'm going to share those details with you and choices you can make to make it a little easier on you. Doing this took me a little over half an hour of stitching. I like to, especially in the fall and winter, just sit with the project and watch TV and embroider, and it's a really easy way to personalize things. And I think it seems a lot more intimidating than it is, but really all you need to know how to do is transfer your pattern onto your material, how to start and how to stop. And then you just do it. And you get cute little personalized stuff. So yeah, let's get into it. Hi, we are starting with a finished good here. The first thing you can do to make this easier on yourself is to either start with a single ply piece of fabric or something where you don't care that the stitching shows on the other side. To transfer the pattern, I made a sort of template for myself on just a scratch piece of paper that was about the size of the space here that I had to work with. I practiced writing her name in cursive in that template space a few times. With the type of stitch we're doing, cursive's going to be a whole lot easier. Once I had a style that I was happy with, I just freehand drew that onto the bag. I did use, it's actually a heat transfer pencil, so I could have drawn on a piece of paper and then ironed that onto this fabric. Another thing I prefer to do, again, when I'm only working with one ply of fabric, is to take a piece of glass out of a picture frame or something and to shine a light behind it. You layer the light at the bottom, then the glass, then the pattern, and then your fabric, and then you can draw on top of your fabric to get that pattern. I tried using an embroidery hoop on this, but there were just too many layers of fabric that I couldn't fit it, so I forwent that. The only other things you need are a needle and embroidery floss, or whatever thread you want to use. Embroidery floss comes with 6 strands, and here I chose to use 3 strands. If I went with more, it would be harder to get my knot through the back of the fabric. You'll see what I mean there. Plus, using the stem stitch, we're kind of doubling up anyway. You'll see what I mean. To start the stitching today, I used a technique that I learned from quilting, which is where you thread your needle and then you take the end of the thread and you place it on the needle facing the eye of the needle. So you're kind of making a circle with your thread, and then you hold it on your needle with your dominant hand and wrap the thread around the tip of the needle 3 or 4 times, and you keep your finger on that wrapped piece, and then you bring your needle through your fabric, and then this is where the finesse comes in. You need to make sure that you keep your finger on the wrapped thread around the needle, so just don't let go of that needle. You need to keep that taut, and you pull your needle through, and as you pull it through, a knot forms on the other side, and you tug forcefully but carefully in a way so that your knot comes through the back of the fabric but does not come all the way through. Now, when you're quilting, you have your batting in the way, and it's a lot harder for the knot to get through the batting, so that usually catches it. But when we're working with layers of fabric, I just had to pull very carefully so that it only came through that back layer and not through the front. And I did it. So with doing the stem stitch, it's helpful to have smaller stitches, especially when you're making curves and whatnot. It's an overlapping stitch, so your first stitch will come up about half a stitch length. I started my stitch from the front side, made sure that the needle funneled through the layers of fabric, not going through to the back side, and then aimed my needle where I wanted it to come back up to begin the next stitch, which is just to the left of where I first started. And you'll see I changed this rule for myself, which is the #1 rule you shouldn't break for a stem stitch, but whatever, it was fine. See, not going through the back. This time I will go a full stitch length, but I will make sure that my needle comes up right around the same spot, even in the exact same spot where I finished my previous half stitch. I just need to make sure that the needle comes up on the same side of the thread where my previous stitch did. So again, I'm bringing the needle up on the left side of the thread here. So your needle travels with the start of your stitch and the end of your stitch comes back to your previous location. And then you just keep going. So you'll see how this becomes, it gives it sort of a twisted look, like it's twisting as it goes. And it's just really important to remain consistent with your stitch lengths and with the direction in which you bring your needle up. So my needle, again, every time comes up to the left of the thread. So when we get to a corner, once we finish our long stitch that ends in our corner spot, we do a half stitch that ends in that corner spot, and then we want to come up right next to it, almost like we're starting anew. And then we'll start like we did at the very bottom, where we start with a half stitch, working back towards where we began. So we'll do a half stitch and then we'll do a full stitch. And here is where I remember that when you're doing curves, it ends up being a lot more beautiful, I think, when your needle comes up on the inside of your curve. So I had been bringing my needle up on the left side of my thread, but here I decided to switch at the corner and bring my needle up on the right side of my thread. So I could have gone back and redid that first line in the B, but I decided my daughter wasn't going to care. I wasn't going to care, and hopefully the internet won't judge me, but you can see the difference between the two. And I just worked my way around. I started to notice that the pencil markings weren't as clear, and I could have gone over it with just a number 2 pencil, but I didn't want the graphite. It's graphite in pencils, right? I didn't want that coming off on this yellow thread since the thread is such a light color. If it would have been a darker color thread, I absolutely would have just drawn on it with pencil and it would have looked like a shadow beneath the thread. Also, I could have just washed it afterwards and that would have gone away. But again, wanted to make this project a little harder on myself, so here we are. You'll see here at the end of the B, I decided to go ahead and stop the thread. I could have traveled between the layers of the fabric from the end of the B to the beginning of the E, but it was a little far for the short needle, especially with the fabric being so sturdy, so I went ahead and finished it. So again, you make a circle with the embroidery floss so that the tail of your thread points towards the eye of the needle, and wrap your thread around a few times, hold that taut, make sure that you don't let go of that wrapped thread, and then file your needle through. So here I'm coming through the lining on the back, and you can see that my knot comes the entire way through the fabric. It didn't stay just on the front, which is fine. So before I let the knot go back into hiding, I trimmed off the tail of the embroidery floss, and I kind of pulled the back fabric away from the front, and the knot just popped back inside. So yeah, and now we'll just keep going. We'll start on the E the same way that we started with the B. And let me speed this up for you so you can just see it happen really fast. So that's it. Let me know in the description box if you want me to show you another example where I do this the much easier way, where I have a single thickness of fabric, where I use an embroidery hoop, where I transfer my pattern in an easier way. I'm happy to do another project for the holidays. Yeah. Cute, right? Hope you had as much fun as I did. So that's it. Let me know in the comments if you think it looks easy, if you think it might be something that you will try. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please like this video and please consider subscribing. I'll see you next time. Bye.